Hello and welcome back to an episode I didn't think I would be recording, and I'm not quite sure I'm glad I'm recording it. This is, of course, uh, the Untitled Destiny podcast extra, a supplementary addition to the standard Untitled Destiny podcast, and I had planned that the next episode I would do of this podcast, specifically the main show, would be the Monday of the week before the showcase, and then the showcase would happen, and then the Friday I would aim to record something to kind of talk about what was revealed at the showcase. And I did say on the last episode earlier this week, I said that maybe I'll record like a surprise extra episode if something happens. And lo and behold, something did happen indeed, and I don't really know. Well, actually, two things happened, but a couple of things sort of related. Um, and one I didn't expect, one that seemed like it would be really exciting, and I thought this would be great, this is a great thing to talk about, and then when we actually saw it, it wasn't that great at all. So, basically, on Wednesday evening, my time Wednesday evening, before I went to sleep, I suddenly saw Joe Blackburn, game director of Destiny, to tweet out that there'd be a State of the Game blog post coming on Thursday, the following day, so yesterday, at the time of recording. And I was kind of like, I was surprised. I was like, "Oh, this is really cool," and this made me this. It was almost funny because I was like, "Oh man, this is so reactionary." Community's in turmoil. Basically, everyone's going crazy the last few months, last 2 or 3 months, since Lightfall, but especially this season. Even though this season hasn't been terrible, it's just been a kind of culmination. Everything's come to a head. Um, and I thought they're actually getting. I was like, "Oh wow, okay, they're getting out ahead of it," and I was like, "Okay, they're going to talk about PvP in this." They're going to talk about maybe monetization because that has been a big topic. And on top of that PvP discussion, not Wednesday, on Wednesday, it suddenly surfaced that on an episode of the Last Word podcast with Lord Cognito, Abontis, Tiger Travis, and Rick Kakis was on that episode. Travis Northup, who is a writer at IGN, said that he went to this Bungie roundtable. That I don't really know quite all the roundtable stuff, but basically he was just saying that he asked them a question about PvP and Gambit, and in terms of like how that's going to relate to like seasons and everything, and they basically said that they'll have more information at the showcase. The quote was more or less saying like, "We'll have more information at the showcase in terms of seasonal content and how that relates to PvP and Gambit content," or something like that. Which that got everyone hyped up on the Wednesday, and then Joe Blackburn came out with that, and everyone's like, "Okay, this is like Judgment time." And then the blog post released yesterday, and I'll be honest, I am shocked at what I read. I'm not at this, like I am and I'm not, but when I first read it, I was deeply underwhelmed. Like severely, like this I kept like to me I was like, this is one of the most disappointing things I've read about Destiny. This is so weird from Bungie. I'm very confused. Now, to just clarify, it's not like the end of the world, but this was a very strange blog post. It was written very weirdly. The way it was kind of put together was kind of weird. There was very quickly in reading this, because they were like, oh, it's over 6,000 words. Very quickly in reading it, I was really disappointed. We're talking within about 2 or 3 minutes of reading it, I immediately got hit by the, oh, okay. And that set the tone for the rest of it, which just never lived up because, as I'll get into, one of the biggest points of contention that people have been criticizing for years now, that Bungie have repeatedly said, yeah, we're doing this, kind of feels like that's not actually happening. And it's not the first time. This is one of many times Bungie have kind of promised something or given everyone hope, and then this is probably the most they've totally shattered those hopes. Unless there is more at the showcase, which they kind of allude to, but not really. Like, it's not as clear as, like, other parts are very clearly like, this thing, if you're waiting to see more on this, we're going to be talking about this. Here, they just say they've got more to share, and it's kind of wrapped up in a paragraph with other things, so it's less clean cut as those other things. So, yeah, I feel that the blog post is pretty much, it's very out of touch. It feels very um, corporate. It doesn't feel much like it's talking to players. It kind of says players say one thing, but we're doing this and it's working, so deal with it kind of thing. That's how it comes across. It almost comes across, because that almost comes across as arrogant kind of thing. It's very, there are bits of like old players are saying this is what we're doing, but it's kind of not really. That's there's only a couple of points like that really, and whenever that's really said, as I said, it's very much like, while players have said this, we're saying this, and this is what we're doing, and it's very now fair enough if they're committed to this, but as it gets towards the end, it's like very much like, you know, this is one of our goals. This is what we did to achieve it, and this is what we're going to keep doing. And it's almost like we don't give a fuck what you think. And I don't mean I don't mean to act like that, but that's how it comes across. And I think, for me personally, as many other players, when we're so invested into this game, and the game and the community means so much, even if it's not been in the community, especially, it's not been in the greatest state since Destiny 2 launch, really. Um, Everyone has constantly held out hope, and Bungie have continuously promised or set expectation that things would get better. And even if the expectations were low, they would kind of promise higher. And this is probably the most honest they've been in certain ways, but at the same time, it doesn't feel very believable, and I don't think people have any care really for Bungie's difficulties in making Destiny, because they've promised so much, and after so long, without saying anything over time or keeping things, candid and communicating with us, they've basically just kind of blown open everything and been like, yeah, okay, we're not doing that then, and this is kind of another thinking point. I won't spend too well. I'm not going to spend too long on it here. Maybe I'll keep dropping in and out of it later, or as this goes on. But I wonder if Destiny is getting the resources it deserves. We've heard that Bungie have a high burn rate, which, for anyone who doesn't know, as far as I understand it, is that it means they go through cash very quickly. They kind of like, they're spending a lot, and they're very good at spending, and that's what Microsoft said with the whole FTC acquisition. The whole Activision acquisition, Microsoft said that they were going to acquire Bungie, but they noticed they had a high burn rate, and I wonder if some of that's playing in here. I think I can understand that, and I believe it, and I do think that has an impact on what we actually get in the game as a result. And so yeah, let's see, where do we start? So I'll start kind of, I don't actually have the blog post in front of me. I've written, for the first time, I've actually written like, what's it, 4 pages of notes on paper. I didn't want to write a script for any kind of like general help for this. I just wanted to write down topics and just kind of shoot from the hip a little bit and just kind of go where I want to go with it, because because that's basically what Bungie are doing. So I'm like, I can't be asked. I didn't want to write all this down and quote it and spend, I was like, no, this is an extra episode. Let's lean into it being unscripted, and we'll go with that. And we're already nearly 8 minutes in, so I'm doing a pretty good job, and I've barely said anything so far. So, at least in terms of what was said. So, they basically start off with some opening stuff. I don't really remember what it said fully, but it was obviously, I think it was noting that the player counts have been good and things like that, the business stuff. But they start off by talking about ritual updates, and they mention about having some sort of changes to make it so that you can, rather than just playing the mode you want to play, rather than having to play like 3 of Strikes, 3 of Crucible, 3 of Gambit, they're basically making it so you can just play 9 of anyone or something, and you get your rewards that way, and so you can just play, you can lean into whatever, which is great, because that means I'll barely ever go to PvP, which is, it's funny they say this, because again, another thing that it's interesting, because someone called Char, who is a friend of, well, I say friend of Cathalian's, that's how I sort of know him, a lot of people might know him, but Char is someone that is a streamer, and he mentioned, obviously, when I say friend of Cathalian's, he plays a lot with Cathalian, and sort of, other people like B-More, and man, I've forgotten. Why have I forgotten other people's names? I don't know. They're a whole group. Butter is one of the other ones. Yeah. But basically, they're a group that you might, if I say Cathalian and Shah, you might recognize that from me saying that. Anyway, Shah was saying on his stream yesterday that Bungie have a tendency to say they're not going to invest into something because it's not worth it, but they kind of haven't invested in it enough to give it worth, or they've not kind of hit it with enough investment to really do that. And I will say there is a hell of a lot of that. And he said this before this blog post went out. It's very, very strange. He almost, called it before it happened, kind of thing. Maybe you could call it uncanny or something. I don't know. But it does. It rings true through a lot of this. And so, they talk about these ritual updates, they mention about some of these simple changes. It feels very much like they are obviously calling out, like, oh yeah, you can just play whatever you want, you know. And so that's interesting considering what they say about PvP and Gambit. It's almost like they're saying, by and large, I mean, they're still investing into PvP, and we'll get into that in a minute, but it's almost like a lot of this is them saying, well, we're not getting enough people investing into this, so you can just play what you want and prove us right even more, so we can drop this other thing as well. Which is strange to me, because right at the end, a couple of times throughout this, they mentioned about making this game as good as it can be for as wide an audience as possible. I'm like, is PvP an audience for you, Bungie? Because certainly not making it seem like that. Now, I will say the changes for PvP and the things coming this season, or I say this season at the end, on the 22nd. In fact, I will say season 22, and this is what I'll get into. Season 22 actually sounds really good. By and large, there's a lot of good amount of PvP stuff. There's some cool PvE stuff by the sounds of things. Some nice quality of life changes. Season 23 sounds interesting, a bit more vague there. And Final Shape, I think, will be really good. There's certainly positiveness. As a game, it is positive, in a lot of ways. But in terms of like what the community's been asking for years, and what Bungie have said that they would deliver for years, not looking too hot. Anyway, that's what I mean about shooting from the hip. I'm just going all over the place. Let's get it a bit more focused. So, they of course say that these changes they're making to rituals and the weapons that we kind of expected. I think they can almost use those to spin it as a big positive, like, oh, you're getting all these weapons. I'm like, yeah, I know, you do this every season. Like, it's not anything wild. I will say they're updating Warden's Law to be a new archetype, which I think is really interesting. And I will say Bungie have been doing this more over time, and they've said that we're getting even more with Final Shape. Be curious to know what that looks like. They'll obviously say that we'll get to see those at the showcase. Then they start off by first talking about PvP, essentially. And I have the blog post here, so I'm going to scroll through as I go through it, so if there's anything I want to pull up. But basically, I guess I can quote this. They say here, quote, "The most frequent feedback we see is that there is just not enough new PvP content, specifically new maps. To set expectations, our studio structure is built to support more overarching updates to PvP, like the ones above, rather than focusing exclusively on maps. When we do focus our resources on building new Crucible maps, it comes with the trade-off of multiple teams' bandwidth on work that contributes to a variety of experiences that players also hold dear, such as new story or exotic mission content, core activities that make up the foundation of each new season, or new destinations. Similarly, bringing back reprise maps also involves extensive porting to the latest version of Destiny 2, which requires additional resources to ensure that the maps work correctly for multiple game modes and playstyles for years to come." End quote. In terms of the updates, the overarching PvP updates, the ones I mentioned above, they say here, they mention things like, a new game modes, competitive division, trials revamp, competitive trials rewards, fire team matchmaking improvements, new rotator players, PvP specific weapon tuning, quality of life improvements, and more. But maps has been this thing. Maps has been the thing that people since, I don't know, like 2020, people have been wanting more of. And Bungie have just refused really to continuously deliver, to the point where we had one new map last year and we're getting one new map this year. That's 2 new maps since October 2019. So basically 2 new maps in what will be 4 years. And that's abysmal as far as I'm concerned. And now they can say all they want that if they make new maps, it pulls from their teams that would otherwise be working on stuff that people also want. And it's like, but they told us that they were investing, and they were asking people, they were saying, check out our careers page, we need extra help doing this. Now, I don't know if those people are being pulled to other projects. I don't really know how it works, but I'm like, I don't want to say, is it so difficult to just do this? Because I don't, it is probably more difficult than I realize. But at the same time, that's not for us to understand, really. And Bungie are all about, we're doing this for the players, we really are listening, and things like that. And it's like, but this PvP stuff has been one of the most confusing parts of all of this. A lot of people, like, have said that they would take a PvP season over having nothing. Now, not that I would expect that, but I'm like, Bungie were barely delivering exotic missions. Like, I don't think, like, in terms of the secret exotic missions that we used to get, we've had we've had one of those with Light or with Season of Defiance, and we've had one of those for Season of the Deep. They're the first two times those have happened since in the way that they happened since back in what 2018, 2019, sorry, with 0 Hour, I think. We've had exotic missions, but we haven't had like secret exotic missions, which they've tried to do more. And I honestly think that like even though the exotic missions are cool, I'm almost like, so you couldn't sacrifice one of those for an extra new map or something. I'm not saying that it's equivalent to that. I'm not sure, I'm sure that that is not a one-to-one, because that exotic mission has multiple people working on it. But it's like, surely you can focus your efforts and divide things a little bit more. Like, especially when you told us 2 years ago that you were hiring for this kind for PvP specifically, and what it really feels like is it feels like Bungie are really trying to say, man, making new maps is really hard, And I'm not saying it's easy. Again, this is what I said about on the other episode. I get it. I've made a game at college. I know it is not easy. I don't know to the same extent to what it's like for Bungie, but I know, and I know a lot of people don't know, but making games is pretty difficult. And when I made a really basic program at college, it was really difficult to like fix bugs, and it was really basic. So I am not trying to say that it's super easy, especially when you've got business involved, careers, you're a big business, you've got multiple games in development. I get it, but this needs to be stated from a higher up point of view at Bungie, where it's like PvP is important. Like the fact is, right? So many people will defend the game being like PVE for being a P. Like some people say, oh, it's a PVE game. In fact, just as a side note, I have seen basically zero positive comments about the state of the game. And I have looked on Twitter quite a lot. I've looked at replies. I've looked at different streamers, YouTubers. There are good things in this. A lot of people have admitted that, but the general sentiment is not positive at all. This, as I said, this is one of the worst things that Bungie have written. It's honestly deeply surprising. It doesn't mean that everything's bad. It just is very surprising. And so, and the reason, sorry, for all of that is because of this PvP stuff. This PvP focus here was, to me, fundamental to Bungie kind of generating a better sentiment. I genuinely believe that if this PvP section was more committed and more like, next year we're going to be releasing more new maps than we have been, and with Final Shape we're releasing 2 new maps. If they had done something like that, I think everything else in this article wouldn't have caused as much controversy, because the PvP situation is the one thing that's been, and for me personally, that's how I would have been fine with, because they mention in the minute, as I'll get to, that effectively Gambit is ostensibly dead, and they effectively confirm that, even though they say they're doing more stuff on it, it's ostensibly dead. I would be fine with that if they hadn't just basically gutted PvP at this point. Now, again, it's not that they're gutting it, because, as I'll get into, there is some more stuff coming, For example, they mention about, as they get into shortly after, they basically say that Season 22, which releases August 22nd, same day as the showcase, we're getting obviously it's only one new map, we're getting a new modifier for PvP, we're getting a new party mode, and there's obviously a new emblem for competitive, division or whatever. They are putting those new modes and stuff into Crucible Labs first, though, which I do think is kind of like, I'm like, well, so I guess it's not really, it's fair enough, but it's like, I don't think you can really fully boast it as like, oh, it's a new mode when you're not going to kind of put it up front. But I will say what is there sounds cool. For example, they talk about like the PvP map is called Multiplex. It's a Vex network style map. It looks really cool, honestly. It's apparently an asymmetrical map. I'm hoping it's decent. I hope people like it more than people like it more than Disjunction that came out last year. But they've also got Checkmate, which is a basically more gun-focused modifier that they can place on any mode. That sounds interesting. They've said that Checkmate will be available in Crucible Labs from week 5 to 10. They're going to start off with 2 weeks of Control, then switch over with Survival, and then 2 weeks of Checkmate Rumble. And I do think it sounds cool. Relic is the name of their party mode, which essentially allows you to use relics from across the game, and you charge that relic by defeating players with like your normal loadout, and then upon reaching a full charge, you can acquire a relic from like a relic depot apparently, and then Relic is apparently meant to be more of a light-hearted thing. They've said that that'll be available from week 1 to 4, and then from week 11 to the close of the season. And these sound cool. I think these are, they're cool, but it's like, this isn't what people wanted. And I know it's, because I've thought about this for a while, it's like, do you have to give your community what they want? But it's like, I think you do, in a lot of ways. Like, it's not, I'm not saying Bungie should make their own game. I think it's interesting that that's basically what they're saying. Like, screw what you guys think, we're doing this, lol. And it's like, okay, I get it, fair enough, but again, I guess you've got to think, right? If this is their outlook, why didn't they tell us this 2 years ago? And why didn't they tell us this the year before that? And the year before that? And they didn't, because they told us they would do something. And this is why I feel like something must be going on at Bungie, where talent's coming in, and higher-ups are maybe saying, oh yeah, do you want to move on to this game? And people are taking opportunity, and people are moving away from Destiny, and so those people have to fill those gaps. And if that's the case, I mean, fair enough. Hopefully it's for the better of the team. Hopefully the team is okay with that. But it's like, this is frustrating, And there is nothing in here that says we are investing more into this. Yet 2 years ago, that's what they told us. And they also told us they want to be long term. They want to get people working on new Gambit maps. Now that's obviously it's like a pipe dream, really. It's not going to happen. But I'd be nice if Gambit got some more. Yeah, and so I'm just having a look here. They've got a new Iron Banner mode coming in season 23. There's some matchmaking improvements and whatever else. I some of this, and I'll be honest, when I first read this, I genuinely skipped over certain parts. Not necessarily. Well, some of it was in these sections about the PvP, but some of it was like they talk about the security and stuff earlier, and the stability, and I skipped over those sections entirely. Which I'll read them at some point. When I first read this, I was just like, I can't be asked. Like, but this is what I mean. They set the precedent very early on in this. That's why I lost interest. My motivation to keep reading was drastically reduced. Typically with these things, I'm quite excited to read them. I scroll through them. I give myself a bit of a rush. I'm like, oh my god, look at all this stuff. It's really cool. And then I'm like, okay, let's read it so I understand it rather than just kind of like, And it's because I'm excited, right? I'm looking forward to reading this, and I think a bunch of other people like this as well. And very quickly in reading this, I was like, I was deeply shocked. I was like, what? This is what you're saying? I'm like, I thought this was you responding to the community to give everyone hope, to make everyone excited for your showcase. People have less interest in your showcase now, like, significantly so. Like, honestly, yesterday, I'll be totally honest, I was planning to record this, right? And yesterday, when this first came out, I was like, I don't ever want to talk about this. I was actually getting annoyed talking about it. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. And I was like, I don't even know if I want to do the Destiny episode in a couple of weeks. And it sounds silly, and I feel better about it now, but it's not. I don't feel better about this blog post. I just feel better about talking about it now. And it was a deeply, like, I can't believe this is what's going on. Like, it's honestly, and I think it's only really people who play Destiny will understand this. People who are invested into the game will understand this. People who don't play Destiny will probably think, oh, you're being dramatic. It's like, no, trust me. I've said it's like I said about that Destiny article, or that the PC Games article that went out a few weeks ago that I spoke about on, not the last episode of this podcast, but the previous episode, that was saying about Destiny 2 isn't its problem, its players are. It's like, look, if you have not been in the trenches from, like, more or less day one or very early on in Destiny's life cycle, you have no idea. Believe me, you have no idea. And some of that is maybe people getting in their own heads, but a lot of it is false promises. It's Bungie. Now, I guess eventually you should say, yeah, you stop believing them. And it's like, that's what people do. But then Bungie have a very good tendency to be very good at hyping everyone up and come out with something that's a different way of saying what they've said that sounds more believable than the last time they said it. Except here, they've basically said, yeah, well, maybe not this time, So, yeah, so I'm just looking at, yeah, let's talk about Gambit, I guess. Woohoo! So basically, yeah, PvP stuff, oh, yeah, hold on, before I carry on, they do say, they after that paragraph that, like, I quoted that bit, they then sort of said that they've got some exciting PvP content coming this month, some other stuff, and then they say, quote, we'll have more to share in the showcase, but let's dive in a bit more right now, end quote. Which to me is like, well, does that mean more for PvP? I don't know. I had my pie in the sky dream was that this showcase, and this was before anything was said, I was like, okay, they're going to come out of the showcase, they're going to say, in after Final Shape, we're going to be doing this, and you can see the fruits of that starting today by this new mode, this new map, this new blah blah blah, and I guarantee you that's kind of what they'll do, except it probably won't be as future focused as I was hoping it would be. So yeah, and then they talk about Gambit, and they basically say Gambit said, "Oh, sorry, well, I'll get into the strike stuff afterwards. I think because the strike stuff is pointless, honestly." Um, but Gambit, they've just said that the revamp they did with Witch Queen didn't move the needle for player engagement. Bearing in mind that revamp, as far as I remember, not many people liked it at launch. I think there are core problems with it that are still problems now, haven't been changed, and they didn't bring back the two maps that people wanted them to. They didn't add a new map. They didn't do anything meaningful for it. They didn't make anything seem, oh wow, this makes Gambit feel really new. It did feel new, but they didn't give anything like, it's like, okay, we changed all the rules of it so it plays differently now, but it's actually the same. It's but like there's nothing actually driving you to go and try it or actually want you to get it. There's nothing unique to it, When they say they invested into it, it's like, no, you changed the rule sets, you took a different approach, and you ran with it. Nothing like Gambit Labs, which I think they've occasionally done. They didn't try it in Gambit Labs first. They didn't incentivize anyone to play it. They didn't really give anything to make you really want to go try Gambit. They were just like, yeah, we've changed like a bunch of the rules, and but I still just think Gambit is fundamentally, it's messed up, and a lot of people's problems with Gambit is like the sandbox, which is a wider problem, you know, and they say here, quote, this is in terms of what they're changing. They say, quote, while we don't have plans to dedicate more resources to significantly transform Gambit, we do have a few updates planned for the year of Final Shape. These include porting the Cathedral of Scars map and its beautiful Dreaming City setting into the latest version of Destiny 2, as well as adding the Shadow Legion and Lucent Hive enemy types, end quote. Sorry, and let's continue. They say afterwards here, quote, before then, we're making Gambit entirely optional to maximize your rewards unless you're looking for a specific piece of gear, for a piece of gear that's specific to the mode. Gambit will continue to serve as a source of exotic engrams via weekly challenges, though as we mentioned above, you'll be able to complete all your weekly challenges in any ritual you'd like starting in Season 22. If you want to stick to Vanguard or Crucible challenges without touching Gambit, now you can. We're also reducing the number of Gambit-specific seasonal challenges starting in Season 22, so players won't need to bank motes to be able to earn that big purse of bright dust for completing nearly every single challenge in the season. Finally, we're adding Fireteam matchmaking to Gambit next season, which will replace the freelance node and should result in faster, better matchmaking by combining both Gambit playlists. We'll keep an eye on reception and player engagement after these additions take place, and we hope you'll visit Old Drifter next season to get your hands on this new Void machine gun, end quote. So there is obviously, like, I think them saying we hope you'll visit Drift next season, I do think that there is part of that that's like them saying, guys, please play this mode. Like, if you want it, come play it. Like, show us you want it, which is fair enough. I get it. But it's like, people don't want to do that because they don't. It wasn't, like, I don't know. I think Gambit is a lost cause at this point, right? Even though I think that there is something unique there. And I think there was something unique there, but Bungie dropped the ball. This is the thing that this is basically all confirmation that their PvP team went over to Marathon, and we all had an idea that was the case anyway, but this kind of write-up is pretty much kind of confirming a lot of that. If it wasn't confirmed already, which it pretty much was, just by, like, for example, like people like Christopher Barrett, Lars Bakken, and a bunch of other, core Destiny folks that were originally on Destiny who are now on Marathon that we've seen in their Vidoc or whatever, which is fair enough. It's cool they're going to work on something else. I think the Marathon topic is interesting because I think obviously there's some people that are saying that they hope Marathon flops and they hope it fails. And look, I'm not going to wish for the game to fail. I don't wish that on anyone. I hope the game does well, and I hope Bungie does well, because I think in some ways, if that game does well, as long as Destiny continues, that might boost Destiny. But I will say that as a Destiny player, as a fan, it does very much feel like even more like Bungie are, as a company, are investing a lot into Marathon, and we, through Destiny, are funding Marathon. Now, of course, they're still funding Destiny because that's the thing they're making money off right now. But if Marathon blows up and is like the most popular game in the world or something, how does that fare with Destiny? Does that mean Destiny falls off? Now, I don't know if it will, but we don't know. And again, maybe it seems dramatic, but this is the sentiment. This is what Bungie are creating, and we're about to reach the climax of this whole saga. And it's like, to me, all of these things, they can say all they want, but I'm like, you need to invest into it. You like Destiny needs investment, and the problem is, right, is that Destiny has never been given a fair shake as far as I'm concerned. Destiny 1 on its development screwed up. Taken King was like the best part of the game. Rise of Iron was a last hurrah. Before we got Destiny 2, which I had heard Bungie didn't want to release. They didn't want to make Destiny 2, but because of Activision, they did. So Activision screwed that up. Then Destiny 2 launched badly, so then they had to recoup that. Then you had Forsaken, which was a big moment for the game. Then Activision said they weren't happy with it. Then Bungie split from Activision, took Destiny with them. That was a big moment. Then they released Shadowkeep, which was made very quickly as, I guess, a holdover. You know, they made it free to play. They made it, like I said, like a bit of a holdover. They started making the seasonal model, and it wasn't until the following year they obviously had things set in stone, where you had things like, you know, when they announced Beyond Light, and they were like, and we've got the Witch Queen and Lightfall, and it was like, oh my god, finally, Bungie are really, they are getting ahead of this. They're really kind of grappling with the story. And Beyond Light had a few things that made people pretty unhappy, but it was through that year that we also got the last. It was in 2020 that we got like the last big update for PvP, which with Trials, and that's when the PvP team seemingly moved away, which was also the last time that they added maps to the game before the first time recently they added maps, which would have been last year, I think. And it was from that point on that I'm like, okay, you've come up with this ambitious, very clearly well-directed direction in terms of expansion releases, and you really, I think Beyond Light was underrated as far as I'm concerned. Not that it was crazy amazing, but like in terms of story and direction for the game, I think it was good. And then you get Witch Queen the year after, which has the best Destiny campaign to date. It clearly shows direction. The witness is revealed at the end. It's masterclass for Bungie. This is the best. It is totally the best. It doesn't mean it's as good as other campaigns in single player games, but it is the best Destiny campaign by a long shot. But that's the thing. They really started to get things under control, and it's at that point, or just after when they started getting things under control, it was just before that they kind of lost a lot of the people that could have been key to really setting Destiny on a much better future. And obviously they've been trying to staff up their team, but it's like, clearly they haven't, because before they had a PvP focus, and then they've lost that PvP focus for them to go and make a PvP game in Marathon, which is great for Bungie, and it's great for PlayStation as well, or Sony, I don't know, whichever one, both, I guess. But it's not great for Destiny, because they've had to kind of like recoup a lot of this. They've had to, it feels like Destiny has lost people as it's tried to grow, and that's really led them on a challenging path where they've kind of, not quite been able to live up to player desires and expectations despite their promises. And it feels like every time they've promised it, they've never quite been able to hit it. And then it's finally here, they've said, look, we can't do it. And so, but I think my issue here, right, is like Gambit. I think it was fine. Them saying Gambit's going to become optional, I think that's fair enough. Probably should have been done a while back as far as I'm concerned. I think that is a fair move, but that alongside the general sentiment that PvP is not really going to be moving very much, that's not a good look, and that's not very good, I don't think. And ultimately, that's what really, like I said, that's what really makes this state of the game as bad as it is, because even though there's good stuff in there, it's even like, I would have been fine with what they said about Gambit here. I was fine reading this, even with everything. I was like, yeah, I get it. Fair enough. You're fine. I understand. Even though you're still asking people to go and play it, but I guess you're trying to give a reason to go there. So I guess I make it. Well, it does make sense. But it's the PvP stuff that really shocked me. That's the part that I'm like, if you had just committed more to that and shown genuine promise and genuine evidence that that's what you were doing, then this would have all been better. And that's wild to me because that, I don't want to say it doesn't feel difficult. It's been 2 years though. It's been 2 years since you told us you were trying to staff up for this kind of thing. And you may have staffed up a bit, but clearly not enough. You've staffed up as a team, but it's like it's all over the place. Like I don't know who's making what at this point. Like I don't know where their resources are going. I don't know how. I was under the impression they had a seasonal team and an expansion. They had 2 season teams and an expansion team, and it's like, is that all you've got? Like, what, you've got a rituals team? Like, I just, it all feels all over the place, and I don't quite understand, how they build Destiny. In that sense, like I thought I understood based on what they had said, but it feels like this is more nebulous than I think it's more nebulous than it should be, because I'm like, you should probably have a PvP team. You should have a team for all of your modes. You should have a team for PvE, which would make sense to be the largest team. You should have a team for PvP, and you should have a team for Gambit. And even if that means that team gets, every 6 months they get something coming to Gambit, I don't think the cadence is the problem. It's the commitment and consistent. I guess the cadence is part of the problem, but what I mean is it's like, it's not that people are expecting this every single season for you to be delivering, an expansion every season. It's people wanted more and they wanted hope, and Bungie aren't giving it, And maybe that's better for everyone's health, mental health. It's to kind of be like, stop asking for something you're not going to get, kind of thing. But I don't know. Anyway, I'm not even halfway through the first page. There's 4 pages of this, but the rest I'm just going to rattle through anyway. Yeah. Another thing. So, as I sort of mentioned with Gambit, they're obviously making it more optional. We're getting the Dreaming City map back. 1 of 2 maps, by the way. There's still Tangled Shore map. We don't know. That's coming back next year. That's cool. I guess they tried. I don't know. Are they going to put more effort into Gambit? I don't know. They're going to add Lucent Hive and Cabal enemy, Shadow Legion and enemies in there. I like, sure, I guess. But I think, yeah, in terms of PvP, I just think more. I was just looking at what I've got in my notes. More resources should go into PvP. I don't understand why this is so difficult for them. Honestly, I know that sounds so lame, and it's like, yeah, of course, you as a non-Bungie employee or non-Bungie higher up don't understand that. But it's like, look, I bet you not all Bungie developers know what's going on or why they're not doing things. I bet you they have I bet you internally they have discussions like this. So it's not unfair to say, oh, I don't understand why they're not doing this. I think this is a larger issue, and I hope, because everyone's been so down about this, which of course isn't great, I'm curious to know if they're going to respond to this. I'm curious to know if they're going to reevaluate some things. They might say, well, if you want PvP, be careful what you ask for, because, but I'm like, but it shouldn't be so fucking threatening. They're a huge company, right? I'm sure it's difficult to manage all that, but it's like, come on. People have been asking for this for years. You have told us it's coming. Why now, 2 years on, after several years on, are we getting these basically excuses being like, guys, look, if we do this, we move away from the other things you want. It's like, but people have shown disinterest in the seasonal model in a lot of ways, and they want more PvP stuff. You don't want to do that because it doesn't make you money, and that's another component to this, is that they need to add more monetization to PvP and Gambit. I'm sorry, I know I don't know how many people play this game for free, but they need to. They need to just be upfront and say to people, if we're gonna do this, it might mean that we have to start monetizing and making maps paid again, or making a mode limited time if you own the expansion, or something like that. They've got to. Because, as far as I'm concerned, if that, I mean, they didn't say that here, but like, that feels like the thing they need to do. I don't get why they don't want to do that. Of course, I don't get it, but it's like, but remember, Joe Blackburn told us 2 years ago they were trying to staff up for more PvP maps, and then they said, long term, they want to get people working on Gambit maps. I know plans don't pan out. I know that's sometimes how it goes. But I think Bungie are really underestimating the the inclusion or focus of a team or focusing on these particular modes. When they tell us there's a rituals team, I'm like, why is there a rituals team? Why have you got one team who's working on these modes? Make a mode, make a team for every mode. 3 teams. You know, I don't know how many people on a rituals team. I'm gonna guess like 5 or 10. That's maybe unfair to me. So maybe there's more people. Fair enough if there's more people. But I'm like, look, the changes we're getting for strikes are so minimal, which I haven't even mentioned about. The changes we're getting to the Vanguard playlist have been so minimal that I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you don't need the rituals team to make. Like, I'm like, people have asked for strike specific loot for a while. I imagine Bungie. I think I've heard people at Bungie are apprehensive to do that. Sure, but I'm like, if you're barely doing anything for strikes, you might as well fucking just ignore strikes because you're still giving us PvE content every season. Strikes have been the same, and the Vanguard Ops playlist has been pretty much the same. Sure, they added Battlegrounds, but I don't even know if that's a great choice. You know, maybe there's more to all this again, but that's been a part of the game that's been so stagnant for so long that people have had problems with for so long, and you've barely addressed it for so long. Why, you might as well just say, just go and work on PvP. Like, I don't know. And again, look, man, it's so annoying because it's so easy for me to say, right? It's so easy for me to be like this, and maybe it turns out very unhinged. Sounds like I'm being not understanding, but it's like, again, you don't know unless you've been like in the trenches. You know, like you just don't know. And it sounds dramatic. It sounds like I'm being unfair. It sounds like I'm being, ungrateful. But it's like, it's not. It's because everyone wants this game to be way better than it is. You know, people want this game to succeed. People, like, I'm telling you, I was even saying this yesterday, if they added the subscription model on top of everything, which would be egregious, but if that's what it took and it was a fairly priced thing, and it was like, you got access to a bunch of other stuff that, more, you get to earn stuff from the store, you get to, I don't know, get the event pass and stuff for free. If they did it well, I'd be down for paying that on top of an expansion, you know? Or just putting more of this content in the expansion, you know? And I think people would. At this point, I think people, as long as you committed, I think Bungie need to just tell us more detailed what they need to do for things. Which I guess that would be, they could twist the wording and stuff, but it's like, man, I don't know. Honestly, I find that, as I said, this is what I spoke on the last episode. There is a lot of excuse making for Bungie, both from themselves and from the community in a lot of ways. And I don't think they deserve much. Well, I think they deserve a lot of scrutiny and criticism that they come under, and I think this blog reinforces that really, because I know plans change, right? Like I get it, but why does this feel? Why has this been such a long and frustrating path for so long? You know, what is this all about? Why is it taking so long? Why? And I'm not here for the game dev is hard excuse. It's been 2 years since they told us they were trying to staff up for this kind of thing, and now they tell us, but that actually pulls away from other stuff we made or other stuff we make. There is, as far as I'm concerned, there's got to be something going on higher up at Bungie's, where their resources are going, where money's going, some management thing. As Lightfall, it's much like I said with Lightfall. Lightfall, I believe, was a big management problem. Like, it's a big, and I think there's evidence of that in this post as well. In the they delayed it because they wanted to give themselves more time, which might have been at that. I believe that to be true, but they didn't handle it very well, and they're fixing it now. But they're telling us like, yeah, we're doing really well. This is really, we're doing all this good stuff, and but I'll get to that later because that's a late thing anyway. But I don't know, I'm getting really hung up on this like PvP discussion thing, but that's because it's so flippin' core to the game. Like, I don't get it. Like, PvP has been a cornerstone of Destiny. It has kept the game going for a long time. As far as I know, it has hundreds of thousands of people playing it every single day. And I just don't understand I don't understand why that part of the game has got so little love for so long. People, and by the way, but not only did Joe Blackburn say about they want to get people working on it more, he told us that it's an important part of the game several times. Look, they're apparently going to focus on it in the showcase. If it is that important that you are focusing on it in the showcase, you clearly give a shit about it, right? And if you do, then why are you not investing more? I'll tell you what, I've said before, by the way, it's really warm in this room because I have my window closed. Uh, it has been raining. It was raining. It looks like it's still going to rain in a bit. So it's really, I'm really warm at the moment, and not the most comfortable. I'll tell you what, but I'm also, it's very stressful being a Destiny player. I'm telling you, it's the worst and best thing. Well, at this point it's become more of the worst. Do you know what's funny? Justin Truman, who's the general manager at Bungie, said in a GDC talk that they believe that the thing they don't want from their player base is apathy. You know, whether if you're angry at the game or you're loving the game, if you're hating, they are almost like two sides of the same coin. They're very. He was like they're two angles of passion kind of thing. I think was more something pretty much what you're saying, and I think he's right. But when I read this yesterday, and I suddenly felt like I was questioning whether or not I want to continue this Destiny podcast, just generally, or if I want to, I questioned if I want to buy Final Shape. All of these things are big. That's a big statement for me, of all people, to make. Like, I've always had in my mind that I'm always interested in Destiny, and that I will always probably buy the deluxe edition and things like that. And I have no problems with that. I'm fine with it. I'm pretty happy to do that. I enjoy Destiny. But this blog post has been so out of touch and so disappointing that I was just like, I don't know if I want to, It sounds so dramatic and like I'm throwing a tantrum or something, but it's like, again, you just don't know. You don't know unless you've been in the trenches, And it sounds so crazy, but like if you've been in the trenches, it sounds like it's been so terrible, but so dark and dangerous and awful, and but it is. I just want Destiny to succeed, and I find that this yesterday was a admittance of like I don't know, just like finally they admit something. Fair enough, you're being candid, but I think what's worse is it wasn't it didn't come across as like, look guys, this is difficult, we are trying and we appreciate it's taking a while, but it is difficult for us. It wasn't like that. It was like, while we know you want this, we don't care. that's how it came across. That's not what was said, obviously, but that's how it came across, and I just don't quite understand why that's what they chose to do, And so I'm just having some water. I've been talking for 48 minutes. I need some water. And yeah, it's funny. I don't think I need to go on anymore, honestly. 48 minutes on this. I'll roll. I mean, is there anything else to talk about here? Like, oh man, there's another thing. Jesus Christ, there's more, by the way. Man, there's seriously more to this. Let's see. They're adding medals to strikes. Cool. Nothing else coming there. That's apparently all they're doing for strikes. For the Vanguard Ops playlist, they're adding medals from Guardian games, and they're going to be adding more medals in Season 23, and they're just an extra thing in the general gameplay that you can earn. That doesn't mean anything, apparently, unless they're adding them to triumphs, maybe, and maybe they'll give some triumph score for them. I don't know. Maybe they could add some bounties for them if they thought ahead, but maybe not, since they make changes in small steps. They don't make a big change at once. Then they talk about ritual armor and armor in general, in terms of a reward. and I don't understand this next section at all because it makes no sense at all, and it's total BS as far as I'm concerned. So let's get into the armor situation, okay? I will read. I think are we gonna? Where is it here? Yeah. Let me just read this to you, and Destiny players will know. Destiny players will know exactly where I'm going with this. They say, quote, players have pointed out that we didn't release a new armor set for the Ritual playlists with Lightfall, as previously called out in our yearly release schedule. Delivering Ritual armor sets at the rates we have in the past has become incredibly challenging, especially considering these sets have historically had very low adoption by players as both base armor and cosmetic ornaments, end quote. Now, just to get ahead of it, they say there's a new Trials armor set coming next in the end of this, in Season 22, on August 22nd, and they will be creating a new Ritual armor set for the final shape. And they also say that they are, quote, amending their delivery plans for... Oh, sorry. Basically, yeah. They basically just said they're amending their delivery plans for... and they will no longer be releasing a new set every expansion. So Destiny players know exactly. If it is... I imagine most Destiny players are the ones listening to this. This is shit, honestly. And this is nonsense. Because... Now, I don't want to just say... oh, just make new armor, just make better armor, just do it, because you need artists and stuff like that. But I'm not saying that. The thing is, I would say in my mind, okay, if you do it every 2 years, as long as it's a good armor set, that's fine. But then I'm like, but it's a year. It's 12 months. You are telling me, right? And this is where it's stupid. Every season, they have at least 2 paid armor sets in the store. That's on top of a season earnable armor set, which you have to buy to earn, I think, or maybe you can get through the pass actually, through without buying it. You get paid seasonal elements through that battle pass, through the season ranks, and maybe we'll get an Iron Banner armor set, and then next season we're getting a Trials armor set. But the schedule for all these is all over the flipping place, and it just doesn't even make any sense half the time. And sure, we know we're getting Trials next season. I don't know when we'll next get an Iron Banner armor set, but if you're making 2 armor sets you can chuck into Eververse every season, and you're telling us, yeah, we can't make a new armor set for each of these playlists every year. Now, I understand for Gambit, because as we've said, sure. Hell, maybe, I would say I can understand for PvP, but that's probably not a thing, but why is this so difficult? How can you make all of these cosmetics, and not just armor sets in Eververse, by the way, but they've got all these cosmetics. They have a ton of designers who are really talented that are making all these really unique-looking cosmetics. They're modeling them, they're putting it into the game, and they are selling them for money every season and every event without fail. But you can't make a new armor set per year. Now, we've got to keep in mind, by the way, when I say a new armor set for each of the rituals, I don't mean totally new, because the last 2 times we've got these, which wasn't with Lightfall, it was with Beyond Light, and it was with Witch Queen, not only are they some of the most uninteresting looking armor sets in the game that look like blue armor drops that you get from around the world, they are also, they're all the same, structure and geometry, but they have different colors and decals associated with their ritual playlist. So the Vanguard armor set looks like the Crucible armor set, which looks like the Gambit armor set, that looks like the Vanguard armor set, and so on and so forth, basically. And obviously you have to make a different set per class, but both times I've seen these with Beyond Light and Witch Queen, I've gone, well, I don't want them. I'm like, I guess it's cool that's art getting them, but it's just nice for collection purposes. So when they say they've had a low adoption rate, it's like, yeah, you know why? There's 2 reasons here. 1, because they look terrible, and 2, because you can't get them with high stats, which is another thing. You can't focus arm. Well, actually, I think now you can focus arm. I don't know if it focuses with high stats. Maybe it does now. But at least for a while, up until fairly recently, you couldn't. But it's how they look. I'm like, they've made some good armor sets for these playlists before, and I'm pretty sure there was a point. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe they've always been reskins of each other. Maybe they were reskins of each other in Destiny 1. To be fair, I don't quite remember that. But my issue isn't necessarily with that, even though I think that would be nice. But it's like, couldn't you divide this up a little bit? I've always thought Destiny would be really great if every 6 months had like a big content drop, more, but not in like a expansion way, but in a, um, for example, like when an expansion comes out, that's like your big PvE moment, and it is the biggest moment of the game for that year, which I think is still fine. And then 6 months later, at the time you have your showcase, at the time you have a new season, you have a big PvP focus, and they're kind of doing that this season, right? A new map, new mode, a new mode modifier, some new PvP stuff, a new trials armor set. Um, but you could tie that in with when you're refreshing these different places, or you could do them on the other end of it, where you go, okay, we'll have a PvE armor set refresh when Crucible gets its update, and we'll have a PvP armor refresh when, or just do them both at the same time. And I'm ignoring Gambit because I think, as I said, I'm not unreasonable. I think it's fair enough if you just don't want to work on Gambit or you don't want to put too much into it anymore. I get it. I really do, and I'm not that, as much as I complained a minute ago, that my complaints aren't to do with Gambit. Honestly, I even though I'd love to see Gambit thrive and I'd love to see Gambit get better and more attention, PvP is that really, like I said, PvP is the main thing. I said this before, but PvP is the main thing. I said about this with the showcase. I said they've got to come out, and along with everything else, PvP has to be a talking point. And clearly it's going to be, but not in this way. Now again, maybe there's more. We don't know what they're going to say at the showcase, but this whole blog post sets the wrong idea if you're going to suddenly reveal something more. But in terms of this armor set situation, this is terrible. You can't make a new armor set, an extra armor set per year. I'm like, we're talking one armor set. Now you might be like, oh, it's difficult. It's like, look, no offense, your weapons team, they're on fire. There's like 30 or 40 new weapons coming every season in Destiny, along with an extra one with reprised ones for the seasonal events. And they're adding new perks. Now bearing in mind, a lot of the weapon models have been reskinned recently, which is another problem, which also hasn't been addressed here, but I guess people aren't complaining about it. We will see if that changes. Hopefully it will. Dungeons are a thing as well, so like this season, you had like the seasonal weapon set, you had more, there are a lot of weapons coming to Destiny every season. Not to say more is better, but because I don't actually think that has paid off necessarily as a one-to-one. I don't really think the amount of weapons we're getting every season is necessarily a good thing. It's good for a chase and good for like, oh, I've got to get them all sort of thing, but it's kind of also not great at the same time, because of like not only is perk variety and weapon variety not particularly great, but then they've said they're doing more archetypes of weapons, and that's where I think Destiny will shine, and hopefully those archetypes are really shaking things up, kind of thing. That's where Destiny needs to go. It needs to be innovating more on these different weapons and on weapon types, and that's where the sandbox can diversify a bit more, because, and I do, and to be fair, this is where I kind of am like, I don't hate more of a PvE focus, because look, I mean, I should have said at the start, like, I play PvE more. I prefer PvE. PvE is the main reason I play Destiny, right? But I still like the PvP, and I'm not playing it much because there's no reason for me to. The only time I go into it is when the game asks me to, and I need to. Like, I haven't even finished fucking Solstice yet, which I have to do this weekend, because I've barely even upgraded my armor. Which, to be fair, I don't know if I'll do, because I've actually I haven't felt like playing Destiny in a while, and playing Solstice, I've been like, I don't really care. And then this blog post, I had the game loaded yesterday. I exited the game before, I think maybe after I read the blog post, or before it is, because I had just kind of, usually these get me excited, get me like, oh yeah, this is really great, and I end up like wanting to play the game, and it makes me feel like my time spent in the game is worth it. This has done the total opposite, honestly. But this armor set thing is really stupid. This wasn't even a big point of contention for me, but it just exposes the total, just utter nonsense from Bungie, honestly. This whole, it's become increasingly challenging. But why? Like, I guess it's to say resources, right? They're feeling that, like, it's pulling them away from other stuff when they should be working on this, and fair enough, but maybe don't make them look terrible. And I had a theory when they did this, when they told us that they were going to be doing it every single year, I had a thought. I'm like, are they intentionally making these not look great because then it means people won't use them, won't go after them, thus they don't think it's worth investing into. And I thought this, and look what happened. Because it is some of the worst armor in the game. Now, one thing they could do is take a different approach. Maybe, rather than making it like really awful looking armor that you just get as drops, make it armor that is like drop through nightfalls or has a really low drop rate in strikes, and you have to and make them rare, make a really nice looking set that people really want to chase, and then when the year is out, then you introduce a new armor set that looks nice, and you can still theme it around the mode, even though I think that holds it back a little bit. But it's like you could have had a Zavala armor set, style armor set. You could have an Ikora. You could have a Cade one. You could have these armor sets themed around people's favorite characters in Destiny that fit alongside that thing. Like you could have a Shaxx, a Saint, and an Osiris armor set for Crucible. Maybe that stuff would be better saved for Trials, but Trials armor sets have always been really good, by the way. But that's what's weird, is it's like Nightfall's at endgame, but your only thing you're doing is weapons. And I'm curious. I had a prediction that they'll be having armor updates with Final Shape, but at this rate, I'm actually curious about. And we haven't got any new mods in a while, by the way. Mods is an area that I thought that they were going to be investing more into, and build crafting, and I'm not seeing it. Strand aspects and fragments, sure, but where are the mods? Where are the mods? So yeah, I don't really think there's much more for me to talk about in terms of the armor, but this seriously, and I don't mean to come across as disrespectful at all. As I said, I spoke about this kind of thing last week on the last episode, and I think it can come across as disrespectful, but I'm just sort of like, you are talking absolute nonsense, Bungie. Like, I'm sorry. Like, unless you can prove to me how that's not nonsense, what's their response to people saying the armor doesn't look very good? Are they just going to say, well, we think it looks good? It's like, no, you don't, because I'm pretty certain none of your devs that have posted your pictures on Twitter that are not probably very few of your own characters, And isn't it funny how they're like, oh, these have low adoption rates, or they have low engagement rates? It's like, yeah, but even your things that you're saying you're trying to do that people have been complaining about, you still say are really good. It's like it almost feels like they said that they are data informed rather than data driven. And it almost comes across in a lot of this that no, you're not. You are data driven. You're telling us it's low adoption rates, so they don't want to use it. Also, they say they say as both. That's the thing, as base armor and cosmetic ornaments. It's like, but isn't there a fundamental part of like, what about the world drops? Like, this is why I don't refresh a world loophole, because there's no reason, right? And I guess I understand, but you're not really doing anything special. It's honestly, this is just, it's just like Charles said. You can't say something's not paying off you if you don't invest into it. And you might say, well, we did invest, we did make the armor set, we put it behind these vendors and no one wanted to use it. It's like, have you tried making a good armor set that looks really interesting, that people want to actually go out and use? People go crazy. Every time a season launches, people go to Eververse. Eververse gets some really cool armor sets every season. Hell, you know what you could do? You could even bring some of those Eververse armor sets that you're still charging from like 4 years ago for the same price. You might as well just make them drops in the game. And again, by the way, there's nothing about monetization in this. Not that I expected that fully. I thought that there might be, considering the discussion was a very hot topic, and still is, especially when we've just had the event pass going on. People talking about events not being great, people saying they're the same as usual. Aztecross, his second most popular video, is about monetization. Loads of people were reacting to it. It became a big discussion in the community, and there is nothing of the sort here. Now, maybe some things, at least in terms of player onboarding, might come in the showcase. Who could say? Maybe we'll get there. But going by this, low expectations, as I said, I'm sure fans should be great. So, yeah, monetization deserves more of a focus, and again, I told you, much like Bungie deserve the scrutiny, they 100% do. So let's move on, and I think we'll get into some. I won't spend long on this because I want to shop and end this soon, in this podcast, because it's going. I think we're over an hour now. I've split into 2 parts. Yeah, we'll talk about some more interesting things. There is some, honestly, there is some good in this, some interesting things. Um, well, some good but vague, but we'll find out at the showcase, or potentially sounding good things. So, let's go through some of those. So, in terms of the seasonal structure, they say they are apparently giving themselves more freedom to stretch in terms of gameplay systems and narrative through season 22 and 3 and 23. We don't quite know what that means, but it sounds interesting. Um, they say that they're hoping season 22 updates, along with all the unannounced content, will quote unquote make Destiny 2 feel as fresh and exciting as ever. And then after that, they talk about some quality of life updates. They say that we're going to be able to favorite cosmetics, up to 100 cosmetics, which I think is really cool. I think that was quite a lot. Transmounts are now unlocked, finally. Stasis fragments and aspects have been moved to the vendor at the Stranger on Europa, I think. Resourcing collections. This is apparently for new players, but I quite like it as a way you can kind of keep an eye on what you've collected. I hope it's retroactive and counts things back in from beforehand. They've also making it so Wish Ender is now a singular quest, which is cool. Then they're changing Iron Banner challenges so that there's one challenge you earn for the multiplayer, your weekly multiplayer, and then another one for the Pinnacle. The challenge for the multiplayer doesn't require specific subclass, but the one for the Pinnacle does. Um, they're making it so that ritual rank ups can happen in game, like instantly, rather than happening when you go to orbit. Strand aspects, Hunters are getting Whirling Maelstrom, Titans are getting Banner of War, and Warlocks are getting Weave Walk, which are going to be coming in the next year, at the end of this season, season 22. They mentioned that there's some exotic armor reworks coming up soon. They're going to talk about them next week, I think they said. There's going to be new weapons. This is an interesting part to me. They talk about weapon subfamilies, mentioning that, I'm just scrolling down so I can get this here. They say, quote, looking into the future, we'll be introducing some entirely new weapon subfamilies with the final shape. Tune into the showcase on August 22nd to get your first look at some of these in action, as well as some other unexpected additions to Destiny 2's arsenal yet to come, end quote. Now, I don't know if that's referring to the leaked subclass that leaked last week or whatever it was. The unexpected additions to Destiny 2's arsenal. I think it's interesting what they're doing with weapons. As I said, I think the weapons sandbox team, great job. I think they've been honestly one of the most consistent teams, probably alongside the the music team and the art direction team for Destiny. Very good. They've said that there'll be something very new and different coming in season 23. Because this is when they start talking about their goals basically for the year. They talk about expanding players' imaginations. They basically said that they reckon the deep dives and pressure trials have paid off well for them. Players are liking them. That they're going to continue on that kind of breaking the norm, which is cool. It's interesting. It's good for seasons. Again, it's funny how they're being like, yeah, we're investing really a lot into PvE because this makes us money, obviously, which they don't say, but you read between the lines. Yeah, and then this said they're rolling something new, very new and different in season 23. They do say, and this is very intriguing, they say, quote, now, without spoiling anything ahead of the showcase, our next season will be heading into creative territories we've never explored before. We're changing some things up in a big way, including the seasonal progression paradigm with an all-new mechanic. All will be revealed on August 22. Now, end quote. I don't know what that means. Sounds interesting. Sounds big. Sounds more big than than we're used to. They also, so I'm looking forward to seeing that again. A lot of the content, the PvE wise, sounds good. In terms of, well, it sounds good from a them hyping us up perspective. Whether or not it will pay off, obviously, we don't know. They've said that in terms of the narrative, the team is quote unquote laser focused on ensuring that seasons 20 through 23 and the final shape connect and are more impactful from last year. Which, as I wrote down here, ding ding prediction, because as I said, some of the seasons last year were setting up an expansion that was never supposed to happen, as we at least assume and can surmise through many, many discussions I've had. I spoke about that last episode, and I spoke about it on the episode before, I think, and the episode before that. So, and I wrote an article on it saying that I reckon that this season will realign the narrative, and guess what? I think it did. Well, guess what I think it did. Guess what? I'm pretty sure I'm pretty confident that I would say it did. It realigned the narrative because of the witness stuff, the revelations, and all that stuff. And of course, the end of the season ties into what we're getting next season, which is probably because Savathun's coming back. So it'll be very interesting to see what we do there. This next bit is a bit of that kind of arrogance and a bit of like the now we're correct, you're wrong. And they say, quote, "We know there are some who would have preferred to experience these stories during Lightfall's campaign. With those players in mind, we believe the totality of this year's narratives will set the stage for the final shape in ways that a single story beat never could. And to put concerns to rest right now," and then this is bold, this is in bold by the way, they say, "the final shape and its raid will provide a climactic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga before we look ahead to what comes next in Destiny 2, end quote. And obviously I find that hilarious because they're saying that, like, oh, people would have preferred to have these stories in during Lightfall's campaign. Now, look, this is because you're not acknowledging that Lightfall's campaign narratively was pretty bad. And it's not that people wanted them in there, it's that you knew. They know this. Like, it's one. I mean, it doesn't need discussion. Honestly, they know this. They know exactly what happened. They're just trying to, acknowledge it to make it seem like they're actually listening. But they know exactly what happened, and I'm pretty certain I know what happened. And I think people do sort of know what happened, but haven't really been discussing it. Again, it's the whole, like, this wasn't intended, they had to delay, this was a thing, they wrote the story effectively in post, because how can you write such a terrible campaign's narrative, and then with really, with lots of things that we don't understand this, what's that for, that sounds cool, why about this? They basically made up a whole bunch of nothing, and then in the Veil Containment lore that they're doing entries, they are some of the best story we've gotten since Witch Queen. I find that very odd. Because I think they probably wanted to drag it out a little bit more, and didn't have it fully figured out. I don't know. That's kind of my general thing. As I said, I've already discussed this at length. Let's see. They talk about difficulty, which I don't really think there's anything to know here, other than the fact that they won't be raising the power increase in Season 22, or they won't be raising the power cap, sorry, in Season 22. They're bringing back Exotic missions and Exotic mission rotated. We know about this. It's going to be there on day one, with Presage as the featured mission, and Devilman's Tail is going to be the reward, and its catalyst, and you'll be able to craft it. Then Vox Obscura for that triple all elements grenade launcher that I've forgotten the name of, and its catalyst will drop there. And then Seraph's Shield with Revision 0 and catalyst will also drop there. I don't know if they're going to make the grenade launcher craftable. They didn't mention about that, but I find it weird if that's because they say Vox Obscura and Operation Seraph's Shield will join the rotation, offering up their respective craftable exotic weapons catalysts as well. So that might mean that grenade launcher is craftable. That'll be interesting if so, because that wasn't craftable before. People haven't spoken about that. They also mentioned that the big ritual changes that they were planning to make in the final season of the year, they've now moved that initiative to the final shape, and they've said that they say, quote, "We have plans to replace some bounties with a more rewarding and engaging system tentatively called the Pathfinder. This is going to be debuted on the new destination in the final shape, and we're currently nailing down a plan for how we can use this new system to replace core ritual bounties in the new year. For now, here's a work in progress preview of the Pathfinder UI," end quote. And they show this very interesting, very nice looking image with almost like a skill tree style node thing that connects to a engram on the far right. This looks like it maybe as like a weekly challenge system or something like that. I don't quite know. Or it looks like, actually, looking at it here, there's different progress bars on like the far left on like the opening things, but there's different progress bars further in as well. I don't know. But it's almost like you can complete these maybe in any order you want, or sort of thing, and then you can, I don't know, you get a reward at the end of it or something. We don't know much about it. I don't actually quite know, because they've said that they're pushing that initiative for the ritual changes back to final shape, because they have plans to replace some bounties with this Pathfinder system, and they said that they're going to be bringing it in with final shape, and then nailing down the plan for how they can use the new system to replace core ritual bounties in the new year. But then they said they're pushing the ritual updates initiative to final shape, but then they said the bounties Pathfinder overhaul is coming in the new year, so I don't actually know. Oh, then again, maybe, yeah, I guess new year would be final shape. I don't know. Sometime in the new year, then, I don't know. And then finally, are we on the last page of my notes now? Because I told you I'd rattle through these. They've obviously just said that there will be an LFG coming in season 23. Then they have an interesting note here, which, did I not write this down? Oh, yeah, I did. I just skipped the page. They say, quote, "Season 22 will include new ways to experience key in-game moments in Destiny 2's history to help get millions of Guardians caught up for the confrontation with the Witness," end quote. this is really interesting. They actually have an image of the Final Shape teaser trailer below it, where they show Guardians fighting together with Kyatul and Mithrax against Vex, sort of echoing a little bit the end of Season of the Splicer, even though Kyatul wasn't in that scene, I don't think. So that's a bit weird, but basically, I wonder if then they're saying they're in, next season in August they're including new ways to experience key in-game moments. I wonder if I've thought for a while it would be cool if they did like a mission style system where you could relive these moments through like flashback style things, not like an entire mission, but like one mission that would take you through Destiny 2, Curse of Osiris, Warmind, all these things, and it would get you would get to see different scenes from them. Maybe you would get to fight in some like recreation of those combat scenarios themselves with some dialogue, and you get to kind of like literally almost experience that. I think that would be really cool if they did if they added like a mission a year to talk about what happened in the seasons. I think that would be very interesting, but maybe it would just be an interesting cutscene. But they say new ways, plural, to experience key in-game moments. So I don't know. To me, that sounds like you could just do a mission. It sounds like multiple things, so a cutscene wouldn't cut that. Wouldn't But who knows? I don't want to get myself too hyped up. And then they also say that Final Shape will have, quote, or that they are, in Final Shape, they are, quote, making big changes to the progression system that will help connect even more players and remove barriers, keeping friends from taking on the same content together. We'll have more info on that in the showcase, end quote. Which, to me, is just, that's a power level rework. It was leaked. It sounds very much like that. That's why they're not raising the power cap anymore. They seem to be very set on this thing. Very curious to know what they're going to do there, because that's something that I think could go either way. And then they say... quote, the features listed above, this is obviously at the end, they say the features listed above, combined with everything we're about to show on August 22nd and everything yet to come, will create the best gameplay experience for the widest possible audience that Destiny 2 has ever seen. The Final Shape is incredibly special to us as the culmination of Destiny's first decade, and we're committed to making it just as special for all our players worldwide as the showdown with the Witness approaches, end quote. And then Joe just signs off at the end. That's basically all my notes. But this isn't really interesting because they're saying about it's being the best game for the widest possible audience. I'm like, PvP though? Even though I think, to give them credit, like when they frame what they've done here, it does frame it well in terms of PvP, because what we're getting this season sounds good, but what we're getting the season afterwards doesn't sound as great. But what's coming in Final Shape? What is the big PvP update for your expansion, Bungie? Is there anything? Are we going to even get a new map with Final Shape? Are you going to surprise us? We don't know, and they haven't said anything here. They've given no hope in regards to that. So as far as I'm concerned, PvP and Gambit are getting totally shafted. I get it with Gambit, not so much PvP. I think that's ridiculous. Nothing on monetization, free to play, or the Destiny content vault. And I think the PvE future looks pretty strong. As a game, I think it looks alright. That's my notes. All done. I can throw my pen, throw it all away. So yeah, this was really shocking. This whole, I'm not going to go through it again. I'm going to sort of wrap it up here. But this showcase, this State of the Game blog post, by the way, was really unexpected. Not only in its existence, but also in its contents that I am pretty disappointed by, and so many people in the community, rightfully so, I think. And again, I do believe Bungie deserves a lot of the scrutiny they go under. I feel really bad for Joe and even everyone on the team, honestly, because people are going to go after them and harass them. Honestly, it was the same thing happened with Luke Smith. It's like, oh, something weird happens, something negative, and people start attacking the devs, and it's really frustrating. It's tiring because people do that. People are going to do that. I don't know what that's going to reflect like on Bungie. I don't know what Bungie are going to do in response to that. Hopefully they're all okay. Hopefully nothing bad happens. But clearly. But I'm glad Bungie they do stand up for their employees, and I'm glad that it's good that they do that, as we saw recently with that lawsuit they won. But yeah, I feel bad for the devs in that way, because I sort of think that even if this is really frustrating as a player, I just hate that it's just probably going to cause more upset and turmoil and frustration, and people are gonna it's gonna send the community spiraling even more. And I hope Bungie can bounce back with some good information now. We've got the showcase. I'm sure it will be good, but it's riding on this news that is not particularly that great overall in terms of like the PvP and the overall health of the game and things like that. But particularly, like I said, PvP, like I said, I think Bungie underestimate. Maybe the data doesn't show it, but I think the data doesn't show it because they don't give reason for the data to show it. So they can't. I don't think that's fair to really go by that. But yeah, I think this is if the community was already down, this is like hitting you when you're down kind of thing, or whatever the phrase is, you know. This is not great, honestly. And I think I sort of, like I said, it comes across a little bit as arrogant, comes across a little bit careless. You know, I respect Joe, I respect the entire team at Bungie. I think the game they've got is very unique, but I am kind of worried for where things are going, honestly. I think the game will be fine. I just don't want the game becoming this corporate mess and, oh, we're only doing it because it makes us money, and we're only doing things because this makes us money, and we're only doing things because the data says this, you know, which is not how they said they were. They told us that they were data informed, not data driven, and it feels like they're becoming data driven, and they're also becoming driven by money, and I don't know if that's from higher ups, shareholders. I don't know if that is from PlayStation. Maybe it is. Yeah, not looking great, honestly. Other than, and I said, other than the PvE stuff, and I'm sure Final Shape narratively will be great. I've made all my predictions about this. I still think all of those stand. You know, I'm not gonna suddenly walk those back. But I sort of, this was unexpected, not really great, honestly, and I think I'm glad that a lot of people in the community are all reacting very similarly. I'm not glad for the sentiment because I kind of can't be asked. It's so tiring, everyone being so annoyed all the time. But at the same time, it's like, it's understandable. I get it. So yeah, we'll leave it here. This is longer than I thought. I will maybe be back with more Destiny stuff in a week on Monday, so this will hopefully go up today on the Friday, the 4th of August, hopefully, and then not next Monday, but the Monday afterwards, we'll be back. I think I originally was like, yeah, I'm gonna make some big predictions for the Final Shape Showcase. I don't think I can now, because one, they've sort of told us what we're going to be learning about there. Obviously, we don't know the specifics, a lot of it's vague, but I think it's gonna be less exciting now, for sure. I hope they rethink their plans, honestly, and I hope they take it on board, and not the, oh yeah, we're listening, we will take it on board. I'm like, no, I mean sincerely, like a proper candid response to what you've just put out and how people have reacted. Because I'd love to know how they thought this was going to go over. Honestly, that's one thing I'm very curious about. Did they think that this would get this reaction? Because I'm like, if they thought this was going to get this reaction, would they have done it? Do they think the showcase is going to save it? If they thought this was going to, you know, like put everyone, like, I'm almost like, well, the first thing I said was like, why didn't you just wait to the showcase? Why did you even put this article together? You should have just waited till the showcase. I think this would have been way better if they'd waited till the showcase. It would have gone over better. People would have still had issues, but it would have been engulfed in the positive, because I'm sure Final Shape will be awesome, I'm sure next season will be awesome, I'm sure the season after will be awesome. And we don't even know that, right? You know, this is all on the basis that all of what they said here is good. And again, they do mention about this being Destiny's first decade, and I'm like, well, I hope you get things sorted out during the next decade, if not for this one. So we'll see. Anyway, we'll wrap this up here. It's frustrating this has been such a down and depressing and complaining episode, but has to happen, you know. Gotta join in the team, the Destiny 2 disappointment squad, if you will. But anyway, if you've been listening this far, I really do appreciate it. Leave any of your thoughts in the comments below. Yeah, I don't know. So let me know what you think. Any questions, feedback, any of that stuff, leave in the comments, and I will talk to you all on the next episode or whenever. Hopefully I'll be back next week with a What I'm Playing episode and some other stuff. I still need to finish Final Fantasy 16. It's not been great because I've not been feeling very well, so that's going to take longer. I've got some other things I want to talk about and check out. In more positive news as well, because Final Fantasy 16 is awesome, and it's, thinking about going back and playing that is really great, and I'm looking forward to it. So, yeah, I will, I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening, and ciao, ciao, ciao.